You may now be seated.
You may bring the jury.
The jury is present, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're now ready to proceed, and counsel, you may proceed.
All right, Agent Murdaugh, before we got interrupted there, I think you're explaining your duties. Let's just start there again. What are your duties at SLED, sir?
In computer crimes, I'm responsible for examining digital evidence, be it cell phones, computers, vehicle infotainment systems. I also respond to network intrusion incidents, and I'm evidence custodian.
Okay. And in the course of your duties at SLED, did you have occasion to come into contact with a 2021 Chevrolet Suburban that was driven by the defendant on the night of the murders?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what was your role with that vehicle? What did you do with that vehicle?
I was contacted about potentially removing the infotainment system for examination. However, it was unsupported by the tool I use. So I was asked to still remove said infotainment and OnStar systems to be sent off for further examination.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 444. Do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes, that's a SLED property receipt that I filled out with the information for the infotainment module and the OnStar module.
And is that the document you filled out when you removed that infotainment center?
Yes, it is.
And what else did you remove?
Infotainment module and an OnStar module.
And you just testified that SLED did not have any tools that gave you the ability to actually analyze those items. Is that correct?
Correct. The software I have access to, which as far as I know is basically the only software, it was unsupported by that at the time.
And do you know if even today that software supports this particular vehicle?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked for ID only at this point. Items 447 and 448. Let's see if you recognize those items. So,
Yes, I do. It's the infotainment module and the OnStar module.
okay. And are those the items that you removed from that 2021 Suburban?
Yes, they are.
Okay. I'm going to ask you let's start with the entertainment center. I believe there is a serial number printed on that. Could you read that serial number on the infotainment center into the record, please?
432-031-217-0000-296.
Okay. And your exhibit 444, which is your paperwork you filled out when you removed it. Did you write that serial number on that paperwork?
Yes, I did.
All right. And you don't have to read it out loud again, but can you compare the serial number for the infotainment center on your property sheet with the serial number on that box and tell me if they match?
They do.
All right. And then what's the other item? 447, what is that?
The LG OnStar module.
Okay. And does that have a serial number somewhere on it?
It does, but I cannot read it in the bag.
Would you be able to do anything to help you read it? Is that, if we open it up, would it make it
Yeah,
easier?
if I could remove it.
All right. Do you have any a knife on you that you
I
can
do.
open it up? And it looks like you're doing something else there. Well, just for the
It
record,
appears to be a Federal Bureau of Investigation evidence tape. That's actually right over the serial number, and the letters in federal are preventing me from reading it. So
is it able?
I
can you peel it up a little
don't-
bit? If it's not possible, it's not possible.
it does not appear
Okay.
that's coming up.
All right, but did you read the, excuse me, on your property receipt, could you read the serial number on your property receipt for the OnStar?
Yes. It is 009 Victor India Echo Yankee 519052.
All right, and to the best of your knowledge, is the unit you're holding that exact unit you took out of that vehicle?
Yes, and for the letters and numbers of the serial number, I can see what I can see does match up.
All right. All right, at this time, say we move to introduce exhibit, the property receipt, 444.
It's admitted.
Four, thank you. All right, and I'm going to show you what's been marked as the exhibit 445, 445. And let me see if you just recognize that document.
Yes, I do.
All right, and is that a document that you personally prepared?
No, it's not.
All right, but is that another property receipt?
Yes, it is.
And are those records that Slade, property receipts, are those records Slade keeps in the normal course of business?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recognize the name and signature of who did prepare that receipt?
Yes.
Who is that?
Lieutenant Britt
Okay. And what does that property receipt represent?
It appears to be representing that GM infotainment module and the LG OnStar module, changing custody for the purpose of providing to the FBI for examination.
And do you know how those two things were sent to the FBI?
I do not.
And the serial number, the GM infotainment serial number, you don't have to read it again, but could you compare that to the serial number on the infotainment center?
They match.
Okay. And then I know you couldn't read the full serial number on the OnStar, but the letters that you can see, can you compare those with the serial number on the second property receipt?
For the ones I can see, they do match.
All right. And at this time, I'm going to move to introduce exhibit 445 into evidence.
Admitted without objection.
All right. And at this time, I'm just going to move that items 447 and 448 be marked for ID only at this point.
You don't have to move for them to be modified only.
Yes, sir. We're just going to mark them for ID only at this point. Nothing further for this witness hearing.
Anything by the defense?
No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Your next witness.
City Hall,
Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will.
If you would, please, sir, be seated. State your name and you'll spell your last name. Put in, please.
My name is Dwight Falkowski. Last name spelled Falkofske.
All right, Mr. Falkowski, how are you doing this afternoon?
Doing good.
All right, where are you employed, sir?
I am employed with the FBI.
Okay, and what is your job title there?
I am an electronics engineer.
Okay, and what unit of the FBI are you employed in?
The Electronic Device Analysis Unit.
Okay, and what does the electronic device analysis unit do at the FBI?
We collect data off of cell phones and other mobile devices, and in my case, vehicle systems, mobile devices in general, that can't be collected by commercial tools.
All right. And so the FBI has a unit dedicated to extracting data off certain devices that is otherwise unavailable. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you kind of mentioned it, but specifically, what is your role in this unit? do you do?
I serve a role as an automotive forensic specialist.
Okay. And what does that entail? What does that mean?
So I take a look at automotive systems and extract data off the memory components of those systems. And then from the images we get from those memory components, I will take a look at there, find the data that we're interested in finding, and we will create parsing tools that will pull out that data and take it from a computer format to a human readable format.
Let's explain that a little more. You said a parsing tool. What is that? Explain that to the jury what that is, please.
Okay, so a parsing tool is, in this case, a computer script that I'm writing that, or I have written, that will go in and look at the collected binary image, the flash memory image that I've created, and go in and either create a file system or just go it raw into the binary and search for data that is of interest to us. This is data we've researched and found, and it'll take that data out of the system and again, put it into a human readable format, text or graphics or coordinate points, so that we can understand it as humans.
And in its most basic format, data is stored how?
In binary.
And what does binary mean?
Binary is just zeros and ones, what a computer reads.
Okay. And the parsing tool, if I understood you correctly, it helps you take that binary information and translate it into information that you can read and understand. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. And have you, first of all, tell us a little bit about your background. What education and training have you had in this area?
I have a bachelor's of science degree in electrical engineering.
Okay.
And if you'll give me one moment, I have my CV here and I'll list out training I've taken with the FBI. In August 2016, I took the Digital Evidence Management Systems training. That's to store data on our electronic evidence management system. In August 2016, completed Digital Evidence Handling. October 2016, Legal Ethics Training. August 2017, CDART mentorship under FE. CDART mentorship is an internal designation for, at the time, I was working as a contractor to the FBI, and this training allowed contractors to handle evidence, and that was the extent of that training. Also in August 2017, completed the CDAR proficiency testing, and I've also testified as an expert witness in September 2019.
Okay. And what, do you recall, if not specifically, but generally, what were you qualified as an expert witness in 2019?
I don't recall the exact name they gave me for the expert witness, but I serve as, what I've told them, I serve as an electronics engineer, automotive forensic specialist.
Okay. And how would you best describe your expertise that you're going to talk about today? How would you personally describe it?
I take a look at automotive systems and I go in there and find the data of interest. We'll go into the types of data would be things like connected devices, cell phones, thumb drives. From cell phones, that can also collect things like call records and contact lists, also navigation data, locations of the vehicle or destinations that the user may have entered in the system. I go find that data in these systems and I will write these parsing tools that I've mentioned to go ahead and pull those out. That's generally the extent.
So would automotive forensic specialist be descriptive of what you do?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to enter Mr. Falkowski as an expert in the area of automotive forensic specialist.
No objection, Your Honor.
He's so qualified.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's talk a little more about the mechanics of how you obtain this data and what you do. And just talking, not specifically in this case, but just kind of generally in your unit,
Okay.
what do you do? When you receive a device from a vehicle, first of all, what kind of devices do you receive from vehicles?
They tend to be an infotainment center, which can be, basically the brains of the system that puts on some of these modern cars, that puts up the screen, it shows you music. If it's got navigation, it'll show navigation. It's the computer brain of that system.
Okay.
Also take a look at components such as the telematics box, which you'll hear about, like the OnStar module in this case. And those will tend to have connected device services and sometimes location data as well.
Okay. And just generally speaking, how do you access the information stored on these devices?
First thing we do is what we call data extraction, and data extraction involves basically going in and finding the flash memory components on this computer, the infotainment system or the telematics box, and we have different methods to extract that data. We have software methods, we have methods where we'll connect to the circuit board, or when sometimes we will just remove the chip and read it with a reader.
Let me stop you real quick. This jury has heard testimony about cell phone extractions and how cell phones are extracted. And you mentioned sometimes you can use a software method. How is that analogous to how cell phone data is normally obtained in an extraction?
If I can compare it to a commercial tool like Celebrite, a software solution would be something you could plug into the system while it's operating in order to get into the system and extract the data you need.
But some of these automotive devices are far more unique than an average cell phone, correct?
Yes.
And therefore, therefore, is there an off-the-shelf ready system that can access most vehicles? to your
No. There is one commercial company called Murdaugh that does have a tool that is used in the field. However, we only accept the devices at EDAU for systems that there is no support for.
Okay. So you mentioned this company, Murdaugh, which does produce a commercially available software that can extract data from some vehicles, correct?
Some vehicles, yes.
But it does not support the 2021 Chevrolet Suburban, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that's how the device ended up with you, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So I kind of stopped you there. And if a software solution isn't available, like Murdaugh, what are some of the other methods that you use to pull data off of some of these automotive systems?
I mentioned such as attaching wires to a circuit board and extracting data from the memory component, or also removing the chip from the board and putting it in a reader and reading the chip, the flash memory chip directly.
Okay. And let's talk more about what you did in this case. When you attempted to access the data for the 2021 Suburban, did you encounter any problems?
Yes, we ran into our first instance of data being encrypted on a vehicle,
Okay. And that's not something you'd run into before?
not on vehicles.
Okay. And briefly, explain to the jury what you mean by encrypted, please.
So when a system encrypts the data, it takes basically a code word such as called a key and scrambles the data using that key so that it can't be written unless you have that key. And the key will, to read it back, you require the key to unlock the data and see it back in its regular form.
And you discovered this data on this Chevy Suburban was encrypted, correct?
That's correct.
I'm going to show you, they've been marked for ID only, 448 and 447. And I'm going to take a look at them, see if you recognize these items, please.
This is the OnStar module that I processed. And this is the infotainment system that I processed for the Suburban.
How do you know those are the units you processed?
We have an FBI identifier tag on here, and my personal identifier symbols are on here
And that's on both of those devices?
on both units.
All right. At this time, state would move to enter exhibits 447 and 448 into evidence.
No objection.
All right, get it.
All right, so let's talk about, you say when you initially tried to access the data on these, they were encrypted. Can you tell us what the FBI did or what you did to ultimately allow you to be able to access the information?
Involved our greater team to develop a tool that would be able to reach into a live system on one of these vehicles and extract the encryption keys and remove get the encryption keys so then we could decrypt the data that we had collected.
Okay, and was that process ultimately successful?
Yes, it was.
And how long did that take?
We approximately 1 year.
All right. All right. And when you access this information and you finally had it decrypted, what types of information did you find? Let's start on the infotainment center. What types of information did you find on there?
So the infotainment center contained connected devices, phones that have been linked by Bluetooth or USB. And associated with some of those devices were call logs and contact lists. And there was also a little bit of location data.
Okay. So you found some call logs, correct?
That's correct.
And how would that infotainment center get call logs? Explain that process. Why would they be on that center?
So a lot of cars that have Bluetooth connectivity will, when you connect the Bluetooth with them, sometimes they will ask you if you want to let the car connect to it or access your data on your phone. Sometimes it doesn't ask, but in most cases it'll ask you. And then at that point, it'll take things like call logs and pull them from the phone into the computer, the infotainment system.
Okay. All right. And you found some call logs on this infotainment center, right? Correct.
Yes,
You found some do data, correct?
that's correct.
Do you recall if you found any from the date of June 7th of 2021?
Yes, there was data from that date.
Location data?
Oh, location data, no.
Okay.
There's not call data.
All right, you found some call data, you found some Bluetooth data. And what kind of Bluetooth data did you find for devices did you find?
It primarily the Bluetooth address of the connecting device.
Did it provide you any information of when a device may have been connected to the infotainment center?
No, there was no timestamps with that data.
Okay. All right, but there's another thing another type of data you found on this infotainment center, correct?
Yes, we additionally looked for vehicle information regarding the state of the vehicle.
Okay, explain to the jury, what does that mean?
So what we were looking for on this car was something to show if the car was moving, if doors were opened or closed, windows up and down. We searched for this type of data on this vehicle.
Okay. And did you find some of that data?
We did. We found what we call states of the vehicle. And in this case, it was more granular things such as, and one of the ones we're interested in looking at is the shift lever going in and out of park, kind of giving an indication.
And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but
Okay.
Would you say that there was a lot of this vehicle status data that was
Yes,
stored?
this vehicle stores a voluminous amount of data and some logs.
And is the majority of it really useful when you
No.
try to okay. And did you attempt to pare down the data you're looking at to find potentially useful information?
Yes, we combed through the data and we looked for data that matched our testing of a similar vehicle or identical type vehicle to be able to identify messages in this log that can be attributed to the vehicle states.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned it. You said testing. What do you mean by testing? What did you guys do to test this?
We obtained a identical 2021 Suburban vehicle with the same build out.
Okay.
And we drove it multiple times and extracted data from it multiple times in a series of tests designed to try to understand what is going on inside the system.
Okay. So this is simple testing. So you go out and drive it and you'd record, you knew when you're driving, so you could record times,
We
correct?
record times, locations, yes,
And then you could go back in and pull that data off the infotainment center of the test vehicle, correct?
that's correct.
And then you can compare that to the logs that you guys wrote saying we did this at this time, correct?
That's correct.
And you what could you do with that comparison? What did that help you with?
So that helped us identify in the logs laid out states, very granular states of,
When you
The
say
system.
granular, and I apologize when I stop you, but I want to make sure, we understand everything you're saying. When you say granular, what do you mean by that? What does that
I'll
mean?
explain a few of the states to give you an example.
Okay,
When the vehicle first, say you open the door and you see the screen turn on the car, that would be maybe one or two of the states that the system tells me it's waking up, the message saying it's waking up, then a message saying I'm showing my animation video on the screen as it starts to boot up. And then eventually, like if the car is being, and then other states of the car, such as in and out of park, a lot of the states only mean something very small in the whole scheme of how the car is operating, a very specific little pieces of data.
okay. And there's a lot of it, correct?
There's a lot of them.
And so you had to kind of figure out a way to kind of pare that data down into something that's useful for YouTube to interpret, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And how did you do that?
Initially, we wrote a utility into our parser that would go through, first of all, and select all the messages we found of interest that indicated some sort of state of the vehicle. And then we attempted to take that data and put meaning to it. And it was a challenging process, let's put it that way.
Okay. But ultimately, do you feel like, at least for certain types of events, you're able to draw some conclusions about what was going on with the vehicle certain times?
Certain events were much more specific about certain of the things that were going on with the car
Okay.
and were clearer.
And when you were asked, the question of, can you use any of this information to determine when a vehicle could potentially be moving? Is that something that you looked for in this data?
We were looking for that data. We found something close to that data.
Okay. And in your testing and analysis, what did you determine would be the best indicator to you, looking at the data, of when the vehicle is moving?
The message indicating whether the car was in park or out of park.
Okay. And so you found a reliable indicator in your opinion, indicates the vehicle would likely or possibly be moving, correct?
That's correct.
Now, all you said was this particular message says it's either in park or out of park, correct?
That's all it says.
And it doesn't necessarily say whether it's in drive, correct?
That's right. I don't know what gear it's in.
Okay. But you can tell when it's out of park.
Correct.
And can you tell from that whether the vehicle is actually physically moving?
I cannot.
I am. And at the end of this analysis, did you prepare data and a parser report to send to SLED at the end of your analysis?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 443. I'm going to see if you recognize that.
Yes, this is a copy that I validated earlier today against the original
Okay.
evidence that was submitted.
So that contains the information you provided SLED, correct?
That's correct.
And generally speaking, what is contained on this CD?
It is our unit's derivative evidence results of what was extracted and reported for both the OnStar module and the infotainment system.
Okay. All right. And so this provides both, we said there's voluminous raw data that came out of this vehicle, correct?
Yes,
And it includes a full copy of that, right?
there is.
But also includes a report that kind of pares that down into more useful information to you, correct?
Yes,
And what did you call that report again? Was it the HTML report?
the format was in HTML, so you could open it with a browser.
And
Yes.
what tool did you use to help you prepare that condensed report?
That was the parsing tool that developed that.
And that's what you talked to about at the beginning of your testimony with the jury. And that's a way to use software to help pare down the data into something useful.
Correct.
All right. At this time, state would move to enter exhibit 443.
No objection.
Admitted.
I'm going to show you it's been marked as Exhibit 449, and just describe what that is to the jury, please.
Okay, this is a spreadsheet that basically shows many of the states of the vehicle that we were looking at in testing the test and running our tests on the test vehicle. This is an analysis of the states that were on there, and this is what we were using to develop the understanding of what these states meant.
Okay. And so what would be a shorter way to describe that? A more simple way to describe that?
It's an analysis of the state machine,
Would
of
it
the
be,
state vehicle states.
okay. This would represent some of the research that you and your team.
That is research. Yeah, that's a research document.
At this time, state would move Exhibit 449
No objection.
into.
Submitted.
All right. And we talked about call logs, and you found some call logs, correct?
Yes,
On this vehicle. And where did those call logs come from again?
they were stored within the infotainment system
And where did the entertainment system get them?
from an attached phone.
All right. And I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 446. And let me see if you recognize that document and where it's from.
Yes, these were call logs that we recovered off the infotainment system.
Okay. And those are two specific calls, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And what are the date and time of those two calls?
The first one, June 7th, 2021 at 22:06:14,
And what was the number dialed on that one?
9111.
Okay, 3 ones. Okay.
And then another one shortly thereafter at 22:06:18, a couple seconds later, or just 911.
And in your research and testing, can you determine of when these call logs would have been pulled off the phone that made these calls?
No, at some point, the system would have downloaded that information from the phone. I don't know what time that occurred.
Okay, all right. And at this time, I would move Exhibit 446.
No objection.
Submitted.
All right. All right, and I'm going to show you what I believe is our last document. And this is Exhibit 442, and I'm going to ask if you recognize this document.
Yes.
And what is that document?
I've titled this document the 2021 Chevy Suburban log file excerpts from June 7th, 2021.
All right. And is this a condensed version of data from that original, that CD that we showed you a minute ago?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that condensed to? Why did you condense it to that particular data for this particular printout?
This spreadsheet was the data that our parsing tool was looking for amongst all the log files and extracting those out.
We talked about this a minute ago, but if you're trying to determine when this vehicle moved, you identified a key indicator. When the vehicle may have possibly moved, you identified a key indicator in that data that would indicate to you, in your opinion, that the vehicle could have possibly been moving, correct?
That's correct. In or out of park.
Okay. And when you produced that report, did you color code certain columns?
Yes,
The rows?
I hand colored the columns on here that indicated those for clarity.
And I think I meant to say rows because they're horizontal.
rows,
correct?
yes.
My apologies. And you color coded certain ones, right?
That's correct.
Okay. At this time, statement moved to enter Exhibit 442.
No objection.
It's submitted.
We're going to publish this. And I'll need the computer, please. No. It's got to boot up. My apologies. Okay. So we'll keep moving. I'm going to need that exhibit back, please. And we're going to switch to Elmo. Once we get the computer going, it'll give a better view, but for the moment, we'll look at the Elmo. Okay. Can you read that document on your screen, Mr. Fulton?
I think I could read that.
Okay. So let's just start at the top. And I think you read the title, this 2021 Chevy Suburban log cars, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then we see a row below that that looks like descriptors, correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, let's just start on the left. Let's explain what these mean. And we see on the far left, it says line and then a number symbol or hashtag. What does that mean?
Okay, I'm going to explain that using the next column over file name first. The file name indicates the particular log file that the data was recovered from. There was numbered log files in the system. And for this date, there were 2 different log files that contain this data. And the line number indicates the physical or the actual line number starting from 1 at the top that data was located on.
Okay. And then we see the date next to that. And what is that again? Specifically, that date and time?
That is the timestamp of the actual log entry.
All right. Let's switch to the computer, please. And this will make this a little bit easier to see, hopefully. Well, if I can get to. Okay, and I think I'm at the top. All right, can you still, is that a little better for you to see? Mr.
I can see it fine.
Okay. All right, it looks like somehow I managed to mess up the spreadsheet. My apologies. All right, so event type. What does event type mean?
Basically, the event type is a part of the log entry that describes what sort of event is going on. It describes the event.
Okay. Event description, what does that mean?
It's just a longer, more verbose version of the event type.
And event value, what does that mean?
That is the actual value of the event rather than this is the event and this is what its value is.
Okay. When you say value, what do you mean by that?
It can be a 1, a 0, a true, a false, or a textual indicator of the system state.
All right. And you say 1 or 0, true or false. You mentioned a while ago that data is always binary, right?
Yes,
And binary is always 1 or 0, correct?
in case a lot of these are 1 and 0.
Okay. And that's how data is typically stored in computer systems, correct?
Typically, yeah.
Okay. All right. So finally, on the far right, it says raw line from service log file. What does that mean?
That is the actual line from the file copied verbatim.
Okay. And so that's the actual data log that you pulled out of the system.
That is correct.
And it includes a timestamp as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's just look at the top here. And you said you added in some color coding, correct?
That's correct.
And the top line appears to be red. That's 83, 84, correct?
Yes,
And 86, 76 is also red, correct?
that's correct.
All right. Why did you color code those red? What is that?
Those were basically messages that were showing the system starting up. The computer for the infotainment system initiated a boot sequence.
All right. And did your testing identify a number of ways the system on this vehicle could start up?
We observed it starting up with several ways.
Okay.
I don't think we know all the ways it may start up.
Okay. Well, what are some of the ways you observed that it could start up?
Just things such as opening the door of the vehicle or getting in the vehicle and turning it on.
Okay. And when we say system startup, we mean the infotainment center.
This is referring to the infotainment center, not the whole vehicle.
Okay. So it's not necessarily we're turning the vehicle on every time we see a red color there.
That's correct. Just the infotainment
It
system.
could be someone just opening the door, correct?
Yep.
And that represents, in some cases, where the screen in that car just kind of lights up if the door opens or from another reason, correct?
That would be an indicator, yes.
And are there certain occasions where the system can kind of start up on its own?
There's some unexplained times when the system seems to initiate a boot for no apparent reason. It's theoretical on what the car is doing at that point.
Okay. All right. And then below that, at line 9142 and 9144, it looks like you color coded those two lines as blue, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and why did you color code those lines as blue?
Those indicated these vehicle parked message that we found to be very useful in determining potentially the car moving.
Okay, and this is something that you found in your testing and analysis, correct?
That's correct.
That was reliable?
This is a reliable message.
All right, and reliably means what?
Reliably tells you whether the car was shifted into park or shifted out of park.
Okay. All right, and looks like lines 9142 and 9144 both occurred at 12/21/43 on June 7th of 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and is that local time?
That is local time.
All right. And what does that mean? What does vehicle parked true mean?
Vehicle park true means the shift lever of the vehicle was placed into the park position.
Okay, so the vehicle was shifted into park.
That's correct.
And but I see it looks like the exact same message on both lines, correct?
That's correct.
Why do we have the exact same message on both lines?
If you take a look, scroll to the right on the one that's showing the raw values, you'll see that the messages are not identical. They're from two pieces of the subsystem reporting the same event.
Okay, so this particular log and maybe some other ones get recorded in different places on this infotainment center.
There's a lot of duplication of messages.
And they don't, if they have the same timestamp, how would you interpret that if you see duplicate messages with the exact same timestamp?
I would typically consider that just a single event.
Okay, and so let's look down below that, and I see multiple things happening, and I'm highlighting it on lines 9148 to 9156 at 12:33 and 23 seconds. And I see a number of things happen there with the same timestamp, correct?
That's correct.
And in your analysis, in your opinion, when you see a group of messages happening at the same time, what's the best way to interpret that information?
You have to kind of take a look at them as an aggregate.
Okay. And so you kind of look at all these messages as a whole to interpret what they mean, correct?
That's correct.
Rather than each one individually.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's look at it. Looking at lines 9148 and all those lines that are timestamped identically, which goes down to line 9159. What does that group of messages, in your opinion, mean was happening on this vehicle at that time on June 7th of 2021?
It looked like the infotainment computer was beginning a power down sequence.
Okay. Okay, and we go down to 1242, and we see a few lines in 9167, 9459, and 9716. We see a few of those red color-coded lines, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and again, what does that mean? Why are those coded that way?
The infotainment system initiated a boot up sequence starting up.
Okay, but any number of reasons of why that would have potentially booted up at that time?
Yeah, it could be a number of reasons.
All right, but then at 9954 and 9956, we see some blue color-coded messages, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and what do those mean? It says vehicle parked false. What does that mean?
Vehicle parked false means this car was shifted out of park.
Okay, and that's at what time?
18:23:57,
All right, help us out. What's that in civilian time?
6:23:57
PM?
p.m.
On what day?
on June 7th, 2021.
And again, we see two identical messages, correct?
Yes,
But you would interpret that as one event, correct?
yes.
And what is that event again?
It's a vehicle taken out of park.
Okay, and we see a few things happen. It looks like 1853 and 1911, some of those red color coded. What's your interpretation for lines? Looks like 396 and 984 on June 7th there. What's going on in those lines?
It's another infotainment system boot up, startup sequence.
Okay. And then we see another red event at 2103-44, correct?
Yes,
And what is that?
another boot up sequence.
Okay. And from any number of reasons, correct?
Correct.
Could be if someone just opened the car door, correct?
Yes.
And then we see a group of messages. Looks like a few at 2104-05, and then a few at 2104-18. Quite a few more at 2104-18, and that's 9:04 p.m. Correct?
That is correct.
All right. And that group of messages at 9:04-18 p.m. What in the aggregate? What is that telling you is going on with this vehicle at that time?
One moment.
I have the times highlighted there.
Yeah, at the 2104-18, those ones looked like the system was, but prior to that, it seemed to be shutting down and then it stopped and started coming back up.
Okay. And so it seems to be starting up around 2104-18, correct?
Yes,
And that'd be consistent with that red coded message we saw a second ago, correct?
yes,
And it's also consistent with the red coded message at line 1281 at 2105-56, correct?
what do you mean by consistent with that message?
I'm sorry. Take a look at line 1281. See that?
Yes, I see 1281. That's the next system startup message.
Okay. And what time is that again?
2105-56.
All right. And I'm going to do my best and I'll try to stop you. Let's try to talk in local time.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
civilian time, excuse me.
I'll start processing it that way.
And I make that mistake too. What time is that in civilian time?
That would be 9:05:56
PM
PM
on June 7th?
on June
27th?
7th, 2021.
Okay, and then below that, we see a group of messages starting at line 1557. And they have an identical time state of what?
9:06:44.
PM?
PM.
All right. And what is that group of messages telling you at that time?
That looks like the vehicle system is continuing its power up process.
Okay. All right. And then we see a series of messages that all occur within 2 or 3 seconds, starting at line 1591 at 9:06:48 p.m. And then continuing on through 9:06:49 p.m. And quite a few at 9:06:49 p.m. and then into 9:06:50 p.m. And that's lines roughly 1628 down to 1654. What does that group of messages tell you is occurring?
So at that point, part way through those message sets, it actually has an engine running event. So the car has been turned on.
Okay, so in your opinion, the vehicle is running at approximately 9:06:49 to 9:06:50 p.m.?
Yes,
Okay, on June 7th?
yes.
All right, and then we see at line 1670 and 1672, it looks like another couple of blue colored messages, correct?
Yes.
And again, what are those blue colored messages? What do they indicate to you?
The vehicle park message.
All right, and it says vehicle parked false. What does that mean?
The vehicle was taken out of park.
Okay, the vehicle was taken out of park at 9:06 and 50 seconds, correct? PM?
Correct.
All right. On June 7th, correct?
Correct.
All right, and if we look at it on line 1672, the timestamp it has a slightly different color stamp. I don't know if is that viewable on your screen? Yeah. It looks like it's colored more green, correct?
That is correct.
Why did you color that particular block green at line 1672?
I was highlighting events where you could see where the vehicle was taken out of park, and it looks like it was continually used and then put back into park.
Okay. And so, first of all, those two lines at 1670 and 1672, they represent the same event?
They are the same event.
Okay. And that's the vehicle taken out of park, correct?
That's correct.
And you color coded that green because you wanted to find when the vehicle was put back into park, correct?
Correct. I want to find, yes,
Okay. Because you, in your opinion and your analysis, you've determined that that message is pretty reliable and something we can rely upon to make a determination of when that vehicle could have been moving, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so 9:06:50 PM, the vehicle is taken out of park. And then let's go down the line, 1904. And we see another green stamp embedded in a blue line. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, it was the next event where the vehicle went back into park
Okay. So at what time is that?
at 9:22 and 45 seconds PM.
Vehicle's put back into park, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And in your opinion, could the vehicle have been moving between those two times?
Yes, it could have. I have no evidence of that.
Okay. All right. But the vehicle's out of park for that.
It is out of park.
Okay. And that's something, in your opinion, we can rely upon, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And roughly, I'm not going to ask you for exact seconds, roughly how much time passes between the vehicle taking out of park at line 1672 and put back into park at line 1904?
Approximately 16 minutes.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to scroll down. And I'm scroll down to line 3059 and 3061. And I see some more green colored blocks here, correct?
Yes.
All right. And what are those blocks? What information is contained in those blocks? What messages?
Again, it's the vehicle in or out of park messages.
Okay. And so, and what time is that? Those two messages at 3061?
3061 shows 9:43:05
PM?
PM,
And that's June 7th,
June
correct?
7th, 2021.
And
And
what,
then
and what, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but at that particular event, what happens with the vehicle?
the vehicle goes out of park.
Okay. And then at the next line below that, what's the time on that, the date time on that?
9:43 and 59 seconds, June 7th, 2021. That's PM.
Okay. And what happens with the vehicle?
It goes back into park.
Okay. And so roughly how much time passed between those two events?
It looks like just under a minute.
Okay. And you can't tell us whether the vehicle actually moved during that time, correct?
No.
All right. All you can tell us was it was out of park for a little under a minute.
Yes.
All right. And not to put you on the spot, we'll go back up and look real quick. So that's at 9:43:05 PM, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back and look at the previous vehicle parked at 9:22:45 PM, and that's line 1904. That's when the vehicle had been placed in the park, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and let's just do some rough math. Do you have a pen? You can write it down if you need to. 9:22:45, the vehicle's in park.
Okay.
9:43:05, the vehicle is now back out of park, correct?
That's correct.
Roughly how much time passes between those two events?
Approximately 21 minutes.
All right, and so the vehicle is out of park for about a minute at lines 3061 and 3079. And then let's scroll down to line 3096 and 3310. What happens with the vehicle there?
The vehicle goes out of park
Okay, at what time?
at 9:44:54 seconds on June 7th, 2021. That's PM.
Okay, and then the next event below that, what occurs there?
Next event is the vehicle goes back into park at, that would be 10 o'clock and 36 seconds
Okay,
on June 7th, 2021 PM.
and those are color-coded green because they kind of represent a matching pair, correct?
That's correct.
Of when it went out and when it went back into park, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and roughly, how much time passes between those two events at 9:44 and 10 o'clock of the night of June 7th?
approximately 16 minutes.
All right. And then let's go down to lines 3327 and 3328. And those are two more green colored events that represent that matching pair, correct?
That's correct.
Vehicle out of park and the vehicle in park, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And what are the times associated with those two events?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:01 and 17 seconds on June 7th, 2021, it's PM. And it goes back into park at 10:01, 29 seconds on June 7th, 2021,
Okay.
PM.
And roughly speaking, how many seconds is that?
About 12 seconds.
Okay. Okay, let's go to just a few seconds later, lines 3336 and 3340. And we see another matching pair of these green messages, correct?
That's correct.
Out of park and then back into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the two times on that particular event?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:01 and 30 seconds on June 7th, 2021, that's PM. And it goes back into park at 10:01 and 43 seconds, June 7th.
So maybe I can do the math this time. That's roughly about 13 seconds it's out of park.
That's correct.
Okay, and we see a whole bunch of messages again, that group of messages starting at 22:04:44 and kind of going on until 10:04:44 p.m. and 10:04:47 p.m. We see another group of messages. What does that group of messages generally indicate to you in the aggregate? And that's this group I'll highlight.
Um, 3 to 2, engine run false. It looks like the system is powering down.
Okay. Okay, and then we get down to lines 3464. And that shows another green color-coded pair of messages, correct?
That's correct.
And again, goes out of park and back into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the two times associated with those two messages at 3664 and 3682?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what
What's
are
the
those
question?
times?
Oh, what are the times?
Yeah.
10:04 and 49, it goes out of park. That's PM on June 7th, 2021. And it goes back into park at 10:05, 55 seconds PM, June 7th, 2021.
All right, and that's roughly more than a minute, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and then let's go down to lines 3490 and 3504. And we see another matching pair in out of park and then into park, correct?
That's correct.
And what are the times associated with those two?
The vehicle goes out of park at 10:11 and 45 seconds on June 7th, 2021 PM. And then it goes back into park at 10:12 and 38 seconds PM, June 7th, 2021.
Okay. All right, and that's roughly just under a minute or so?
That's correct.
And we're almost to the end here. Okay, and then we see another message. So first of all, we see some messages that are blue colored at 3506 through 3515. And why are those blue coded instead of green coded for you?
Those are more vehicle park messages, but they appear to be with the, basically duplications of the existing ones.
So that's just duplicate information, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and then finally, at line 3521, we see the vehicle, what happens with the vehicle at that line?
Okay, it goes out of park at 10:13 and 39 seconds PM on June 7th, 2021.
Did you find a matching kind of pair as we've talked about for when the vehicle goes back in the park? after
No.
that?
No log message was present for that.
Okay. Can you explain why that log message may not be present?
We found during the testing of our test vehicle that there are times when the system decides to temporarily stop recording message. The reason is not clear.
Okay. But you do see it come out of park at 10:13:39, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, and just to reiterate this, you're just telling us when this vehicle's in and out of park, correct?
That's correct.
Because that's the most reliable piece of information you've been able to deem from this data, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't tell us necessarily where the vehicle's moving, correct?
That's correct.
And you can't tell us if it's moving, or if you see it go out of park, who's shifting the actual gear knob, can you?
No, we don't know who's in the car.
And all you can look at is this particular data, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just so it's clear, you've determined, you're interpreting this data because you used a test vehicle to see when you see these messages, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that's why you're giving us these opinions today, correct? From your
That's correct.
testing. All right. And when you were using your test vehicle, if you took a vehicle, if you took the vehicle out and drove it, took it out of park, drove it, and then put it back in a park, would you find that exact same matching pair of in and out of park messages we just talked through? correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you weren't able to determine any other data that would reliably tell you if it was moving or not, correct?
That's correct.
All right. But, so if the vehicle's driving and you see that, you would see that identical pair of messages like we just talked about.
Yes.
And however, if the car's just stopped and someone shifts it out of park and just sits there with their foot on the brake, and then sometime later puts it back into park, would you see that same matching pair of in park, out of park message and back in the park message?
Yes.
You would, okay. All right. Not for mistake, Ms. Witness.
By the defense. Stand for a moment. All right, back in order.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Hopefully this won't take long, just a few clarifying questions. First, you mentioned that the data was encrypted.
Yes. When we pulled the data off the chip, it was encrypted.
Is this something that's the manufacturer did?
Yes.
It's not something that the end user doesn't do something to encrypt the data. It comes that way.
Not for an infotainment system, no.
And so it sounded like you kind of had to reverse engineer with a test vehicle to figure out the media stuff. Were you not able to get General Motors to assist with that?
We could, but we generally try to find the data on our own. Often we have it's difficult for us to get the manufacturers to work with us on that data.
Did anyone attempt to reach out to General Motors, say to de-encrypt the data?
Not from EDAU.
I won't go over this spreadsheet too much. You still have the exhibit with you?
I have a copy.
Okay. And we didn't have a. Is it up?
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you just briefly about, if I can find it on this. There were some things that were happening at 903. 903. 2103. Let me do it. I've got my phone on that. 904. I didn't quite understand. What do these mean? This group of things that say info state, sleep, then state, some abbreviation, animate, all these things happening in this 904, 905 range. What does that mean?
So as I was attempting to explain before, that some of these messages, like individually, they don't mean a whole lot. Like, what does this actually mean? But in this case, it's generally showing. Like, could you scroll down just a little bit more so I could see a few more of the messages? So it looks like initially, like at line number 984, where the system initially boots up, and then at 904.
Well, let me stop you there.
I'm
When
sorry.
you say system startup, what does that mean? What is the system and what is it doing when it starts up?
So this is just the computer for the infotainment section. This is not the entire vehicle, but something woke up that system. And just like your home computer, it needs to boot up before Windows is ready. It's a similar thing that has a boot up sequence. This is a log that says that was initiated.
Okay. And what would trigger this? What would make this startup happen?
We know that some events that make it happen, such as opening the door or just starting the car, we don't know all the events that might make that happen.
Well, on my Chevy, if you walk near it with the key fob, the lights come on the little door handles. You can stick your foot under the rear and the rear will come up. Would walking near it with the key fob trigger anything?
It's a possibility, but we did not investigate that.
But scrolling down here to 906 and 48 seconds, am I reading this correctly to say that the engine was turned on?
Can you scroll down just a little bit further? Keep going just a little bit more into the 49-second. So if you see that there was at one point, there was messages such engine run false, which is only within the same second as a following up on engine running true. It's messages like this that get a little bit confusing on there, but ultimately it's basically saying, here I'm at, but I'm moving to this state here. So in that case, it looked like the engine started running at this time.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'll belabor this spreadsheet anymore, but I did want to ask, did you additionally retrieve data related to the phone connecting to the entertainment system? I think there was the 911 call that you.
We had a call log that was extracted, as well as the connection of a Bluetooth, or several Bluetooth devices.
I'm going to hand you a printout. Is this a printout of device connection history that you were able to obtain from the vehicle?
We need to go back to the original material and take a look at this, because some of this looks more than like what we originally collected. So there's pages of this here.
Right, it goes back way outside of sort of the time frame, but that's. I mean, can you identify this?
I mean, the format looks familiar, but it looks, I might have to go back into the original material and pull up the HTML report. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
And Your Honor, I think the witness is asking to look at his original data to validate what Mr. Barber has. State has no objection to that. We'll just need a few minutes for him to validate it.
No objection, Your Honor. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room for a short break, hopefully.
now be seated.
If you bring the jury.
Your Honor, we're just copying a little bit of data, so we'll need maybe 2 or 3 more minutes.
We're going to bring the jury and let them watch you do that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for the day and resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please do not discuss the case.
LeBron is
baby.
officially the new king. Can we coronate him?
Yes.
Can we coronate him
yes,
as the
yes.
new king?
For now.
For now.
Oh, no,
Yeah, you
no.
think Giannis is going to break his points?
No, he's
you
got no
you
shot.
said before the show.
Listen.
No shot.
Giannis,
Not a chance.
If Giannis had a jumper, that record would come
Yeah,
down.
and if your aunt
No,
had-
you can't say that.
If I
you
were
know what I'm-
200 pounds less, I'd be a male model.
What is
Let's not get
what
carried
is
away.
this?
I don't know. That might be a stretch.
That's not a stretch. Look at
What
his
do you
beautiful face.
have?
He's
What
done his
is-
research. He's done his homework. These
Hold
are
on.
all
Let's
LeBron James
also
stats.
assume he's playing.
Wait till you get to it. This is just 2 pages.
All right, he's got stats.
When
He's
I bring
done
papers,
research.
when I bring papers out, it's over.
There's actually
Wait a minute. So you're an analytics guy?
Oh, listen,
When it's appropriate.
you are too. You got a degree from college. If you go to
Play
college,
the odds.
He got me on that one.
Play the odds.
He got me.
That's right. If you graduated from college, you played the odds.
Yeah, I froze. He got me on that one.
Gee, that's a great comeback.
there's very little argument at this point to argue Jordan over LeBron.
There
There
is
really
very
isn't.
little. Although, you know what? I feel sorry for my former coworker, Skip Bayless. He has been tormented by LeBron.
Why
20
do you feel
years
bad?
ago,
He
October, he
hates
came in the league.
LeBron.
He hates him.
Yeah.
He
How
had
can-
a
How can
tweet.
you hate a guy like that?
I don't know. I don't know. And LeBron, every time I've ever spoken to him about it, says this: "Oh, he's cool. He's my Howard Cosell." He doesn't even begrudge Skip. I think he understands it's an act and it's a brand. But Skip, I don't know if he sent it last night. I saw it this morning. He sent this tweet.
And you
that
saw,
say-
is it the one Leroy responded to?
I don't know. Did Leroy respond to one?
Yeah.
Well, it was the one saying LeBron did this, LeBron did that. MJ was, third. And,
We'll get them both in tag board.
I
Hold
mean,
on
he
one sec.
cherry picked stats that Michael had the clear advantage in. But one thing, and I think I always say is my mic drop for the greatest of all time, what he did in the finals against Golden State in 2016. On all-time record-setting regular season team, he led all scorers, both teams, in all 5 categories. That's GOAT-worthy for me. I don't really need any more than that. But the other thing that really hit me was I was watching the game last night, and I said definitively, oh, he's breaking the record.
Oh,
He flew in his teammates from high school.
Did you see how he came to the facility?
That was the dead giveaway.
Oh, I said, he dressed for a funeral.
Yeah, and
that gets coming down.
It was somewhat staged, so it was hokey, but I still loved it at the same time. The conversation with his kids at halftime, and he knew he was mic'd.
Yeah.
He knew everyone was going to hear it.
I'm going to get it.
But he was literally sitting there like, what you guys think? Should I do it? I mean, 8th, 3rd, 8th, 4th. What you think? Yeah. All right, let's go do this.
Hey, yeah, that's like